If I click,
So Ray, I clicked the record and we'll see what happens.
okay, good. You've got it then. All right, so I'm going to start the presentation, and then in a little while, Chuck's going to show you some stuff on one of these websites. So you should be seeing my screen now. Does everybody see my screen, the PowerPoint presentation? All right, here we go. Good luck to us all. You're sharing your screen. Okay, do it.
This evening, we thank you for gathering with us to review some of the resources that exist to help us all become better leaders within our congregations. We acknowledge that the Bible tells us that we all have spirit-given gifts, but none of those listed in that book include leading a council meeting, balancing the congregation's books, recruiting volunteers to clean the communion glasses, or drafting policies that keep everyone safe and informed. So even if you are already a prophet, or can speak in tongues, or can perform miracles, or are a good teacher, or are a great healing evangelist, or any of the other gifts listed in the Bible, there may still be something here for you. Let's explore what there is. This series of seminars for congregation leaders was begun in 2021, inspired by Bishop Catherine and Pastor Deering, and led by Chuck Thomas and Ray Miller. Our goal is to provide Northern Great Lakes Synod congregation leaders with a gathering place to share useful tools and relevant information in support of their ministry. Because our synod is so geographically large, we decided to do this via Zoom to make it easier for everyone to participate. This also gave us an opportunity to record the presentations and later post them on the synod website for those who were unable to attend or who wanted to go back and review what had been said. We began in 2021, and we have produced 3 seminars a year. The topics covered have reflected the interest of the participants, and we welcome or we continue to ask for our ideas about other things we could cover to make your lives easier, or at least less precarious. This evening, we'll have a quick look at the past seminar topics and the resources that exist on both the Northern Great Lakes Synod website and the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America's website that might help you in your ministry. We will occasionally leave this PowerPoint presentation for a quick detour through the World Wide Web to look at these 2 websites and show you where to find things. Let's start with the past congregation leaders seminar topics. These can be found on the Synod's website, and we'll show you how in a minute. Our first seminar covered some basics of leading a church council meeting. Doing things according to Robert's rules can seem stiff and stodgy, but rules like those help to keep things organized. They help respect people's time at the meeting, and they allow for reasonable conversation among members. Volunteers usually emerge from a well-run meeting with a feeling of accomplishment rather than frustration. Our second seminar explored the breadth of ministries each of us are involved in through our membership in the Northern Great Lakes Synod and the ELCA church-wide organizations. From supporting colleges, seminaries, missionaries, and schools to growth in faith, hunger relief, and disaster response programs, we are already familiar with the ministries of our individual congregations, but the extent of our collective ministries walking together is truly staggering. In our third presentation, we learned how Portico Insurance retirement and benefit programs are helping the lives of our rostered and lay staff members while saving our congregation's money at the same time. This one was not recorded because things change each year at Portico, and they preferred to keep the presentation live. We can always have another one if you wish. Pastor During explained how we can support our rostered pastors and staff while keeping a firm eye on the future of our ministry together by forming a mutual ministry team. Chuck guided us through reasons for having written policies in our congregations and provided some suggestions about which policies were most important to have. Turns out that keeping our children, members, visitors, staff, funds, and buildings safe is really good stewardship. And of course, it's always good and wise to refresh our understanding of best practices for handling our congregation's income, expenses, and tax obligations. Betsy Koski helped us do that last year around budget time. Our first seminar this year was hosted by Michael Moore, not that Michael Moore, different one, who provided timely advice on how we can comply with copyright laws in our bulletins, newsletters, streamed videos, and websites. As we expand what we do beyond our worship spaces into the internet and mailboxes, it's our duty to understand and honor the rights of ownership that apply to text, artwork, music, and other forms of intellectual property. Michael works for ELCA's publishing arm and is there to help us navigate through the rough seas. So that's where we've been. Let's see what other information might be of interest to you on the Synod's website. The Synod provides lots of resources for congregation leaders in addition to the seminars we just discussed. Here's just a few. There's a list of pulpit supply people for times when our pastors or vicar are away. There's information about important aspects of congregational life, like maintaining an up-to-date constitution or handling funds carefully, including how to audit income expenses, and developing policies and environments that prevent sexual misconduct. Each year, new compensation guides for rostered staff are provided and approved by the Synod Assembly and are available here to help you with budgeting. There's a time and talent inventory for the Synod, like the one you may use in your congregation. The Synod depends on volunteers just like your congregation does. And there's a map that shows the extent of our Synod and how it's divided into conferences. And there are also programs there like Faithful Innovations that are designed to help us all grow as disciples. In addition to those things, our Synod website is full of other useful resources that include announcements and calendars of upcoming events like youth gatherings, seminars like this one, workshops, either live or recorded, as well as important meetings and assemblies. The Synod newsletters, both Northern Light and e-notes, are available for viewing and downloading on the site. Pray Faithfully is there, which is a set of daily devotions for the current week that are prepared by both lay and rostered members of our Synod and cover the whole year. And there's also an archive of past devotions there. Maybe you know someone who would be interested and able to contribute a week's worth of devotions to that project. There are mission stories and faithful innovation testimonials of lay members from across our Synod, as well as training materials for motivating good stewards and leaders within our congregation. There's information about who we are and what we believe as Lutherans of the ELCA that can be used as teaching tools or simply as a refresher for those of us who have been out of confirmation class for a few years now. And then there's a photo and video archive that helps us recall past important events in the life of our Synod. If you've recently installed a new pastor, for example, you might find photos there of that happy occasion. So let's break away from the PowerPoint now and have a quick look at that Synod website.
So Ray, you need to stop share. Okay. Well, now I'm going to share my screen and we're going to take a trip to the Synod website. We'll take a trip and we'll show you where you can find some of that great stuff that was referenced in the PowerPoint slides we just viewed. Once you open the Synod homepage, which is what's on my computer sharing right now in front of you, it's at nglssynod.org is the homepage. If you look across the top here, there's home, about our Synod. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Okay, good. About our Synod, resources, programs. If you click on the down arrow, you'll see that there's things underneath there where I'll take you to stuff that you might want to look at. Like here's the Synod map location that Ray talked about.
Can you enlarge? Can you enlarge a little bit or no?
No, this is what the Synod website looks like. I can't do anything with it.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, but I understand that it's kind of small, and Ray and I talked about that, but I pretty much got it on my whole computer screen. Where I wanted to take us here is under resources. If you look at the resource, and can you follow if you're following my mouse cursor down, you'll see this is where the e-notes are located and where the Northern Light newsletter is located. If you click on either one of those, which I'm not going to do right now, but if you click on that, it'll take you to the archived versions of those, or publications of those items. So you could review past or current issues. But we're going to take a little trip to Congregation Council Resources. And then you get up this page and it has archives and resources, and where you want to go is resources. So you want to click on resources. Again, I know this is a little hard to see on this Zoom, but I'm trying to just kind of give you an idea of how to get to these things. And then when you do it yourself on your own computers, later, you'll be a little bit easier to read. But here under Congregation Council Resources are all the things that we just saw on those slides. The pulpit supply list, the model constitution, and so on. All those things that was mentioned by Ray on the slide, on the PowerPoint, are located right here under resources, Congregation Council Resources, and then resources. If you scroll down here, you'll see this resource library for congregational leaders. And this is where all of the previous workshops are located. And if you click on, you can click and you can view it on YouTube, or you can just view the PowerPoint, either one. As going forward. Now, if you go back up to the top of the page and you click on the down arrow for programs, you'll find direct links to many things like the Kaleidoscope Challenge that's been ongoing, and also the Lifelong Faith Formation. And if you click on that, it takes you to the Lifelong Faith Formation class page. Now, I know Bishop said the course offerings were going to be listed, but they aren't listed yet. If you go here, you'll see that there's nothing there for the fall semester other than a paragraph. But I expect that the listings will be up by the end of July, if not earlier. So just kind of check that as you go back and forth. All right, so we want to go back to homepage. Get you back to the homepage just by clicking home. I'm not going to go into any more great detail about what's on the Synod website, because basically the things that are going to be important for congregation leaders, we've kind of showed you where they're located. So we encourage you to explore this website to learn more about what's all available there. And at this time, we're going to go back to the PowerPoint. Whoops, I gotta get out of here so I can share so I can stop the share here. There we go. Ray, oh, there we go. It's up at the top now.
I can cause it to happen, Chuck.
Okay. I'm trying to figure out how to stop the share. It's not happening. So if you can cause it to happen, then go ahead. Great.
I think you should be seeing my screen now.
Yes.
Everybody see that? All right. We've got one slide here that we'll look at.
The Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, or ELCA for short, has a website too with tons of information and resources for you. These include events calendars and news headlines, things like that. There are also social statements and summaries of church-wide initiatives like the Truth in Healing movement, a task force studying the future of rostered ministry, and Bishop Eaton's statement on anti-transgender legislation that has been sweeping the country lately. Of course, there's information about how the ELCA is organized to help individual synods and congregations, as well as statements about our understanding of the teachings of Martin Luther and how that informs our Lutheran faith today. There's a very interesting section called Living Lutheran, which holds that we are a church that values and encourages diverse voices and lively dialogue in our faith and life. Living Lutheran is an opportunity for church members to express individual perspectives. These are not necessarily official church positions, but provide a wide range of observations and perspectives from across the whole church. It's really cool. There are blogs, lots of blogs on topics ranging from world hunger to racial justice to ecumenical and interreligious perspectives, blogs for women, youth, young adults, and Latinos. I don't see any for seniors, but maybe that's because most seniors don't blog. I don't. Chuck will take us on a tour of the ELCA website to give you a flavor of what's there and how to get around.
So now it's back to you, Chuck. Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
Okay, Ray has stopped his screen share and I've started mine. So we're gonna, okay, so the ELCA website contains a plethora of resources that could be helpful to congregations. There's way more material on the website than what we have time to talk about or show you tonight. It'd take us until midnight or later to get through everything. I don't think any of us want to be here that long. But we would like to highlight a few and show you how to get to those resources. So once you open the ELCA website, which I have done, I'm on the front page of the ELCA website. You've probably watched this banner that keeps cycling through. But at the top here, there is a list of categories: about the ELCA, faith, find a congregation, resources, news, our work. If you look under faith, you'll see a box open up and there's links underneath here for the things like our ELCA teachings, how we relate to other ecumenical and interreligious groups, some daily Bible readings, and then links to our faith and society stuff, such as our social messages and social statements. I'm going to click here on social statements just to show you how you can, it gets to the social statements page. And if you scroll down this page right here, if you can see right now, it's kind of in the middle of my screen, is a list of all of the ELCA social statements. These are, a social statement is the expressed and approved policy of our church. There are also things called social messages, and those are kind of interpretations, messages about some of our social statements, and they are not necessarily firm polity. The firm polity is the social statement itself. Now, let's go back to the home page. Okay, so that I just did the back arrow to get to the home page again. So let's go back to the home page and let's search under resources and look at all the stuff that might be available to you. Well, I shouldn't say all the stuff because we don't have time to look at all of it. If I go to resources, that takes us right to this page here, ELCA resources and documents. And if you scroll down, you see a whole bunch of icons, and under each icon is a topic. And if you clicked on one of these icons, it'll take you to a lot of resources under that particular topic. So, for example, let's look under congregational communication tools. So I'm going to click on that, and that takes me to this. I know you can't read this print, so that's why I'm going to talk about what's here. This print is pretty tiny on the Zoom, but when you're on the website yourself, you can certainly see it. So under congregational communication tools, there's some tabs down here. One's called best practices, and then you'll see Advent, SP, Easter, so on. These things are basically graphics that you can grab and use for your own publications at your congregations. But under best practices, there are things like crisis communication for congregations, media relations for congregations, social media for congregations, planning procedures, social media platforms and content, photo guidelines. These are all helpful guidance documents, or in some cases, sample policies that you can enact in your own congregation. I want to show you what the social media planning and procedures document looks like. So I'm going to open it up here. Can everybody see that just opened up on my computer?
Yep.
I'm not seeing any heads up. Ray, you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So this document, social media planning and procedures, best practices for congregations, talks about the elements of a social media strategy. In today's day and age, congregations, at least any congregation that uses social media at all, should have a well thought out strategy of how they're going to utilize social media and how they're going to respond to, let's say, less than positive posts to social media about themselves. So anyway, we'll get out of that and we'll go back. So that's what's underneath congregation communications tools. So let's look at another category. To get out of this and get to a different category, just go back up here to resources, click on it, and it takes you back to that page that has all of the various categories. So now let's take a look at maybe what's available under the financial. So here you see budget reports, financial reports, congregations, synods, expense reports, and FAQ. What will be important or useful to you and your congregations is things that are under the congregations tab. So I'm going to click on that. Now you see a series of tabs. Well, under this tab, there are many helpful tools for treasurers, financial secretaries, and councils, such as how to complete a pastor's W-2, best credit card practices. If your congregation has a credit card for your pastor or for your council president, there's some guidance on best practices for utilizing that credit card. Things to remember about a housing allowance. There's some important aspects to housing allowance that's important, especially to your pastor, in terms of tax implications. There is things on here. I'm trying to go down to it. Here we go. Automobile expense report. If you are paying mileage and how you are taking care of that. There are audit guides on here for how to take care of it, how to do an audit. There's also, and it's kind of strange, but there's also a document on here that talks about what the council officer's job description might be, what your president should be doing, what your vice president, what your secretary, what your treasurer should be doing. There's a document on here that kind of gives you that background information. The document on here on data security. We collect, store, and communicate information, so we have a responsibility to protect that information, to keep it safe and secure, and make sure nobody's personal identity information is released out to the people that it should not be released to. This kind of gives us information on how to do that. There's also a financial and accounting guide. And I'm just gonna very quickly show you that. It's pretty comprehensive document, and I'm not going to go through it in detail or anything. I'm just going to kind of show you the table of contents here. So you can see there's a lot of information in here. Handling church income, accountable reimbursement policy, setting financial goals, how to set your budget, how to set up the accounting system, how to deal with petty cash, how to deal with church employment and payroll issues, and so on. How to report your finances, and an audit guide. A lot of good information in that. There's also on here, underneath this tab, there's a guidance document for human resources. So, a lot of congregations hire staff. Well, this will give you an idea of how to deal with your hired staff. It also gives you some information about how to deal with your volunteer staff. And there's also a sample expense voucher. If you are a congregation that requires your folks to submit their expenses in some way, here's an example expense voucher, how you can do it. You may note I'm not opening all these things, and the reason why is because they don't open up on the web page. You probably can't read it, but this link here is download. So you have to download you have to download each document that you want to look at to your computer, then open it on your computer. So we're not going through that tonight, doing that. We just kind of want to show you where all these things are. Okay, so let's go back and look at another resource type. Again, I'm going to go up to resources. I'm going to click and get back to the resource page. Let's take a look at information technology. So under information technology, there are some great resources that are worth spending time reviewing. There's a sample information security policy. Okay, so this is a sample policy. You can have ones, you can create a policy for your congregation using this as an example. There's information about information security awareness. Boy, that's a mouthful. Information security awareness. There's a document here that helps you with that. There's a document on tips for computer and internet safety. There's also a document here about setting up web ministry. If you're a congregation that has a web ministry, this document is a good guide for developing and maintaining a web presence for the congregation. And then finally, there's a sample work equipment form. So basically what this is for is you have a lot of electronic equipment around the congregation, around your church, things like video projectors and all that stuff. This is a form that helps you keep track of who has what, and also identifies what their responsibilities are. We encourage you to explore the we encourage you to explore the information here to make sure that you have internet use policies and practices that are properly protective against abuse or malware. Okay, let's go back out of this and let's go to one last information resource page. And this one I think we need to look at is the legal. So under legal, you have some tabs down here, one for employees and volunteers, one for financial information, one for miscellaneous, one for property, one for sexual misconduct, and one for tax issues. Under the employees and volunteers tab, you can find things like an employment application form. If you don't have a form and you want to have one, here's a good one that you can use and adapt for your use. You have a guidance document on employment laws, how they might affect congregations. You have information about, we hate to think that this is something that might happen to you, but once in a while you have a need to fire somebody or terminate them. Well, here's a good document on the best practices for handling terminations. There's also a reference check form here. So when you're hiring people, you want to check their references. Here's a form to help you on how to do that. And there's also a document here on security procedures in the workplace. In today's age, it's very important to understand how you keep your workplace, your church building secure. And there's information here about what to do if you're in an active shooter situation. And then finally, there's a volunteer application form here, and this is a very important form for you to consider if you have volunteers who are working with youth or children. Under the financial tab, there's a guidance here for accepting restricted gifts if you are of a mind to do so. So this is where someone gives you a gift and puts ties to it. The gift can only be used for certain things. So this is a guidance on how to accept those gifts if you so want to do so. There's also a guidance here on confidentiality information. How what types of things you need to keep confidential and how you go about doing that to make sure they stay confidential. There is a document here, a guidance document on how you manage your financial records. There's a document here on for a sample congregation ethics policy. I mean, we all want to be ethical in everything we do. Well, here is a sample policy that you could enact within your own congregation to, I guess, lay out the rules that you want to have. Under the property tab here, a couple of good, useful pieces of information. There's a building use agreement. So this is a sample policy for congregations on the use of the church property by other individuals and organizations. Do you allow an outside organization to meet in your social hall? Or do you rent your social hall out to groups? This is a good bill. This is a good sample policy on how to do that. There's also a document about buildings and property information. This document contains valuable information about what you need to do if you're going to lease or rent part of your building or all of your building. And it also talks about what zoning issues you may have to overcome. Under the miscellaneous tab here in the legal section, there is some documents that you might want to look at. Things like amending your constitution. This gives you some good guidance about how to go about that and what you can and cannot do. There's a good document here, a sample computer and internet policy that you could adapt for your own congregation. There's a document about copyright, the use of copyright materials. There's also a vehicle use right here, problems that can occur when a vehicle use policy and guidance on what to do. If you are a congregation that has a 15-passenger van or larger, that you go around and pick up people or you haul youth events, your driver needs to know what rules and regulations they have to follow, and they're all detailed in this vehicle use document. And then there's a legal checklist for congregations, and I'm going to pop that up here because I want to show you that. This legal checklist for congregations basically is just a quick checklist for you to use to consider if you in your own congregation have thought about all of these types of things, and if you have, do you have procedures or policies in place to handle all these types of things? Things like your governance, who can sign for things? Is your constitution up to date? Is your congregation incorporated? What are your tax issues? Are W-2s and 1099s being properly filled out and issued? Your property stuff, is your deed clear or is it restricted? Or if you're leasing anything, do you have a proper lease agreement? Do you have all the insurance you need? Have you followed all the employment laws properly? And do you have abuse prevention policies in place? Things like that. So as you can see, when I go back to resources, there is a lot of different categories of resources, and we've only touched the surface of a few of them. Like I said, you could spend hours looking at things. And while I touched on things that have more to do with administration, there are lots of resources here that have to do with spiritual too. Okay. Or things that have to do with community outreach or community action. So, and our justice advocacy. There's a lot of resources here for all that stuff. So I think right now it's time to leave the ELCA website and return to the main PowerPoint presentation. So Ray, can you stop my screen? I can't seem to stop share here.
I'm not sure.
You did it last time.
I know, but now something else is going on here. Let's see. I'm going to do this and this. I think that this is swapping out
There we go.
my screen now.
Oh,
So one last slide here before we open it up for discussion.
And at long last, our next seminar will be held by Zoom on Thursday, September 14th, 2023 at 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Our guest speaker will be the ELCA's Vice President, Imran Siddiqui, who will share his thoughts with us about raising up and supporting lay leaders in our congregations. His perspective on this is intriguing in light of the pressures we see as the number of people entering the clergy declines and congregations seek non-traditional ways to organize their ministry. Do you know where your congregation will be in 10 years, in 20 years? What will the church look like then? What will leadership look like then? What direction is God calling us, and what challenges does he have in store for us? These are some of the things we can tackle at our next seminar.
So there you go.
Okay. So Ray, I'm going to stop the recording now.
Okay, that's good.